Film is a powerful tool. It shapes how we see the world. It tells us stories about who we are. Sometimes those stories are inspiring. Other times they are deeply troubling. Two films, both called The Birth of a Nation, show us this power. One was made in 1915, the other was made in 2016. They share a title, but their stories could not be more different. They are separated by a century of change, struggle, and conversation about what it means to be American. Looking at these films side by side reveals so much about our country's journey with race, history, and the stories we choose to tell ourselves. Understanding these two films is important. It's more than just a film class lesson. It's a lesson in American history itself. The 1915 movie, directed by D.W. Griffith, is a landmark in filmmaking technique. But honestly, its message is one of racial hatred. It glorified the Ku Klux Klan and presented a false, dangerous version of the past. The 2016 film, directed by Nate Parker, tries to reclaim the title. It tells the story of Nat Turner's slave rebellion. It aims to tell a story of black resistance and the fight for freedom. These films are like two opposing voices in a long, difficult argument about America's soul. Why do we still talk about a film made over a century ago? Because its impact is still felt today. Griffith's film was not just a movie, it was a cultural event that promoted real-world violence and discrimination. It helped revive the KKK and ingrained harmful stereotypes into the American imagination for generations. The 2016 film is a direct response to that legacy. It represents an effort to use the same medium, cinema, to challenge those old lies and to center a story that was pushed to the margins. Comparing them helps us see how storytelling can be a weapon, but also how it can be a tool for healing and truth. This essay will explore these two monumental films. We will look at their different stories and messages. We will examine how they portray race and historical events. We will discuss how they were received by the public and what their social impact was. By comparing them, we can learn a crucial lesson. We learn that history is not just what happened, but also who gets to tell the story. The battle over the title The Birth of a Nation is a battle for the narrative of America itself. It's a story of how cinema can build a nation up, but also how it can tear it down. The story of D.W. Griffith's 1915 film, The Birth of a Nation, is a deeply distorted view of the Civil War and its aftermath. The film is divided into two parts. The first part shows America before and during the war, focusing on two families, the Northern Stonemans and the Southern Camerons. They are portrayed as friends torn apart by the conflict. The film presents a romanticized, gentle view of the pre-war South and slavery. It suggests that life for enslaved people was simple and that their owners were kind. This foundation is crucial for the hateful message that comes later. The second half of the film is where its true, ugly purpose is revealed. It takes place during the Reconstruction era, the period after the Civil War. In Griffith's telling, Reconstruction is a disaster. He portrays newly freed black Americans, often played by white actors in blackface, as unintelligent, aggressive, and dangerous. Black legislators are shown drinking and putting their feet on desks, unfit to govern. The film's central villain is a mixed-race politician who lusts after a white woman. This narrative was designed to create fear and justify the oppression that followed slavery. It was pure propaganda. The message of the 1915 film is clear and horrifying. It argues that the empowerment of black Americans destroyed the South and that white supremacy was necessary to restore order. The film's heroes are not the Union soldiers or the abolitionists. The heroes are the Ku Klux Klan. The KKK is shown as a heroic force riding in to save white families, protect white womanhood, and violently reclaim political power from black citizens. The film's climax shows the Klan preventing black people from voting and restoring a white-led government. It literally presents the birth of a new, white supremacist nation. This message was not an accident. It was a deliberate attempt to rewrite history. Griffith used groundbreaking filmmaking techniques like close-ups and cross-cutting to make his story feel emotional and real. This made his propaganda even more effective. He wanted his audience to feel sympathy for the defeated Southerners and to fear the black characters he created. The film ends with a vision of a reunited America, but it is an America where black people have been put back in their place. The film's title, The Birth of a Nation, refers to this dark vision of a country unified through white dominance. It is, honestly, a painful and damaging legacy. Nate Parker's 2016 film, also titled The Birth of a Nation, sets out to tell a completely different story. It deliberately takes the title from one of cinema's most racist films and uses it to honor a story of black liberation. This film tells the true story of Nat Turner, an enslaved man who led a rebellion in Virginia in 1831. The film introduces us to Nat as a child, where it is discovered that he can read. His enslaver's wife teaches him to read the Bible, hoping to use his literacy to pacify other enslaved people on the plantation. This sets the stage for his journey. The story follows Nat as he grows into a preacher. His enslaver, Samuel Turner, realizes he can make money by taking Nat to other plantations to preach sermons of obedience to other enslaved people. During these travels, Nat witnesses the full horror and brutality of slavery. He sees families torn apart, people tortured, and the deep suffering of his community. The film does not shy away from showing this violence. It wants the audience to understand the conditions that would lead a man of God to believe that violent rebellion was the only path to freedom. This journey transforms him from a preacher of peace to a leader of war. The message of the 2016 film is one of righteous rebellion against an evil system. It argues that when oppression is absolute, resistance becomes a moral duty. Nat Turner begins to see messages of liberation, not obedience, in the Bible. He comes to believe that he has been chosen by God to free his people from bondage. The film portrays his decision to lead an uprising not as an act of senseless violence, but as a desperate and courageous act of self-defense. The rebellion itself is depicted as brutal and chaotic, but the film frames it as the inevitable consequence of the profound violence of slavery. Ultimately, the film is about reclaiming a narrative of black history. For centuries, Nat Turner was often portrayed as a fanatic or a monster. Parker's film presents him as a hero, a martyr, and a complex human being. The title, The Birth of a Nation, is reinterpreted. It no longer refers to the birth of a white supremacist state. Instead, it suggests the birth of a revolutionary spirit. It points to the idea that the true birth of a just nation could only begin with the fight to end slavery. The film wants to inspire a sense of pride and recognize the long history of black resistance in America. The way these two films represent race and history is honestly a study in opposites. They're like, two photographs of the same event taken from completely different perspectives. In D.W. Griffith's 1915 film, the historical narrative is twisted to serve a white supremacist ideology. The heroes are the white Southerners, specifically the members of the Ku Klux Klan. They're presented as noble saviors, protecting their way of life and their women from supposed threats. The film uses every cinematic trick to make the audience cheer for them as they ride to restore white dominance. It's frankly a complete inversion of morality. In contrast, the villains of the 1915 film are the black Americans and their white allies. Black characters, performed by white actors in exaggerated blackface, are depicted as a caricature of humanity. They're shown as either childishly simple-minded or as power-hungry brutes. Griffith's film portrays the Reconstruction-era governments, which included black politicians for the first time in American history, as corrupt and incompetent. This was a deliberate lie meant to justify the violent overthrow of those governments and the disenfranchisement of black voters. The film's goal was to erase the real history of Reconstruction and replace it with a racist fantasy. Now, Nate Parker's 2016 film flips this script entirely. The heroes are the enslaved people who rise up against their oppressors. Nat Turner is the central hero, a man driven by faith and a deep love for his people. His fellow rebels are shown as courageous individuals fighting for their basic human dignity. The film asks the audience to empathize with their struggle and understand their motivations. It presents their violent actions not as a first choice, but as the only choice left in a system that denied them their humanity at every turn. The heroes are those who fight for freedom, no matter the cost. The villains in the 2016 film are unequivocally the institution of slavery and the people who uphold it. The enslavers are not portrayed as kind masters as they were in Griffith's film. They're shown as cruel, greedy, and violent. The system of slavery is depicted in all its horror, from the whipping post to the sexual assault of enslaved women. The film makes it clear that the true threat to the nation was not black freedom, but the brutal system of slavery itself. By centering the story on Nat Turner, Parker's film directly challenges Griffith's historical lies. It replaces a history of white victimhood with a history of black resistance. The social impact of the 1915 The Birth of a Nation was immediate, massive, and honestly, devastating. It was a box office smash hit, the most successful film of its time. President Woodrow Wilson reportedly screened it at the White House and praised it. This presidential endorsement gave the film a powerful sense of legitimacy. For millions of white Americans, the film confirmed their prejudices and gave them a heroic story to believe in. It presented a version of history that justified segregation and the Jim Crow laws that were in full effect across the South. It was a powerful piece of cultural programming. However, the film also sparked immediate and organized protest. The newly formed NAACP, led by figures like Webb Du Bois, launched a nationwide campaign against it. They organized protests, wrote articles, and tried to get the film banned in several cities. They understood that the film was not just entertainment, it was a tool of racial incitement. These protests were among the first major civil rights demonstrations of the 20th century. Tragically, the film's popularity also led to a massive resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan, which had been dormant for decades. The film acted as a recruitment tool, and the new KKK adopted the film's imagery, like burning crosses, as part of their ritual. A century later, the reception of the 2016 The Birth of a Nation was far more complicated. The film was highly anticipated after a triumphant debut at the Sundance Film Festival, where it won top awards. Many saw it as a necessary and powerful corrective to a long history of racist filmmaking. It was praised for its bold attempt to reclaim the title and for telling a story of black heroism. The film was intended to be a major cultural event, arriving at a time of rising activism with the Black Lives Matter movement. It was meant to contribute to a national conversation about race and justice. However, the film's release was soon overshadowed by controversy surrounding its director and star, Nate Parker. Details about a past rape trial from his college years resurfaced, leading to widespread public debate and condemnation. This controversy complicated the film's reception. Many people felt they could not support the film because of the director's past. As a result, its social impact was muted, and it did not perform as well at the box office as expected. The conversation shifted from the film's important historical message to the personal life of its creator. The legacy of the 2016 film is therefore a complex one, a story of artistic ambition entangled with personal accountability. In the end, comparing these two films shows us more than just how much Hollywood has changed. It shows us how much America has changed and, honestly, how much it has stayed the same. The goals of these two filmmakers were worlds apart. D.W. Griffith's goal was to solidify a myth. He wanted to create a shared memory for white America that erased the sins of slavery and cast the perpetrators of racial violence as heroes. His film was a tool for building a nation based on exclusion and hate. He was incredibly successful, and the damage his film caused has lasted for generations. Nate Parker's goal was to dismantle that myth. He aimed to use the very same art form and the very same title to tell a story of truth and resistance. His goal was to challenge the official memory and replace it with a story from the perspective of the oppressed. He wanted to show that the fight for freedom has always been a part of the American story. His film was intended to be a tool for empowerment and historical reckoning. While its ultimate impact was complicated by outside factors, its purpose stands in stark and noble opposition to its 1915 predecessor. It sought to tear down the very ideas the first film built up. The different effects of these films are a powerful lesson in media literacy. The 1915 film teaches us that just because something is technically brilliant does not mean it is morally good. Griffith was a master filmmaker, but he used his skills to spread a dangerous lie. It reminds us to always question the messages we see on screen and to ask, whose story is being told, and why? The 2016 film, along with the controversy surrounding it, teaches us another lesson, that art and the artist are not always easily separated. It forces us to have difficult conversations about accountability and whether we can embrace a message while questioning the messenger. For students of history and media, these two films are essential texts. They are not just movies, they are historical artifacts. They reveal the anxieties, beliefs, and power struggles of the times in which they were made. Studying them forces us to confront the ugliest parts of our past and to appreciate the courage of those who fought to tell a different story. They show us that the act of storytelling is a political act. The battle for who we are as a nation is fought not just in legislatures and on battlefields, but also on our screens. Understanding the birth of a nation, in both its forms, is crucial to understanding America itself.